Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Martinez had spent 12 years climbing the ranks in the Navy, her expertise in advanced naval systems earning her a reputation as one of the most skilled engineers in the fleet. When she received orders to join the USS Hayworth, a cutting-edge destroyer, she knew this assignment would be the pinnacle of her career. The ship boasted the latest in automated defense systems, integrated AI navigation, and voice-controlled emergency protocols that she had helped design during her previous assignment at Naval Systems Command. The Hayworth's crew welcomed her aboard with the usual mix of curiosity and respect that accompanied any new senior officer. Rebecca quickly settled into her role as Chief Engineering Officer, familiarizing herself with the ship's unique systems and establishing rapport with her engineering team. The destroyer was scheduled for a critical mission in the South China Sea, where tensions had been escalating, and the crew needed to be prepared for any scenario. Chief Petty Officer Derek Thompson had been aboard the Hayworth for 3 years, serving as the senior enlisted advisor to the engineering department. A career sailor with 22 years of service, Thompson had worked his way up through the ranks the traditional way, specializing in mechanical systems and conventional engineering practices. He commanded respect among the enlisted crew and had developed a reputation for his no-nonsense approach to leadership. From the moment Rebecca stepped aboard, Thompson made his feelings about her appointment clear through subtle acts of resistance. During department meetings, he would consistently question her decisions, often prefacing his remarks with comments about book learning versus real experience. When she introduced new protocols based on the latest technological advances, he would roll his eyes and mutter under his breath about fancy computer stuff and how real sailors had been maintaining ships long before engineers with degrees came along. The tension between them became apparent to the entire engineering crew. Thompson had particular disdain for the ship's advanced voice command systems, which he viewed as unnecessary complications that took away from traditional seamanship. He frequently made jokes about talking to computers and would deliberately ignore the automated systems in favor of manual overrides, even when the voice commands would have been more efficient. Rebecca tried to address the situation diplomatically, requesting private meetings with Thompson to discuss their working relationship. She emphasized the importance of unity within the department and explained how the new systems could enhance their operational effectiveness. Thompson would nod and agree during these conversations, but his behavior remained unchanged. He continued to undermine her authority in front of the crew, often making dismissive comments about her technical background. The breaking point came during a routine training exercise. Rebecca was explaining the integrated emergency response system to a group of junior officers when Thompson interrupted her presentation. "With all due respect, ma'am," he said, his tone dripping with condescension, She's just an engineer. When things get real out here, you need sailors who understand how ships actually work, not someone who learned everything from a computer manual." The room fell silent. Rebecca felt her face flush with anger and embarrassment, but she maintained her composure. She knew that responding emotionally would only validate Thompson's disrespect and damage her standing with the crew. Instead, she simply nodded and continued with her presentation, though she could see the doubt in some of the younger officers' eyes. The aftermath of Thompson's public dismissal created a ripple effect throughout the engineering department. Word of the incident spread quickly through the ship's informal communication network, and Rebecca found herself facing subtle challenges to her authority from various quarters. Some crew members began second-guessing her technical decisions, while others seemed to test her resolve by responding slowly to her orders or requesting unnecessary clarifications. Rebecca knew she had to address the situation decisively, but she also understood that direct confrontation might escalate the conflict and further divide her department. Instead, she decided to focus on demonstrating her competence through her work, hoping that results would speak louder than Thompson's inflammatory rhetoric. She threw herself into optimizing the ship's systems, working long hours to ensure everything operated at peak efficiency. The USS Hayworth was approaching a crucial phase of its deployment, with intelligence reports suggesting increased enemy submarine activity in their operational area. Captain James Morrison, the ship's commanding officer, had made it clear that the crew needed to be prepared for potential combat situations. The destroyer's advanced sonar systems and automated defense protocols would be essential if they encountered hostile forces. During weapons drills, Rebecca noticed that Thompson continued to bypass the voice command systems, insisting on manual operation of critical equipment. This approach not only slowed response times but also increased the risk of human error during high-stress situations. When she attempted to correct him, he would respond with barely concealed insubordination, claiming that real sailors didn't need to talk to machines to do their jobs effectively. The situation reached a new low during a department meeting when Thompson openly questioned Rebecca's qualifications in front of the entire engineering crew. "I've been maintaining ships since before some of you were born," he announced, gesturing around the room. "I've seen plenty of officers come and go, but engineering is about getting your hands dirty and understanding how things really work. You can't learn that from a textbook or a computer screen." Rebecca felt her patience wearing thin, but she maintained her professional demeanor. "Chief Thompson, I appreciate your experience, and I value the knowledge you bring to this department. However, modern naval warfare requires us to adapt to new technologies and procedures. The voice command systems aren't just convenience features. They're designed to save lives and improve our operational effectiveness." Thompson's response was swift and cutting. Ma'am, with all due respect, when the shooting starts, the crew needs to know they can count on their equipment and their leaders. These fancy computer systems are just another thing that can break down when you need them most. Give me good, old-fashioned mechanical systems and sailors who know how to use them. The room fell silent again, and Rebecca could see the crew watching to see how she would respond. She knew that her next words would either establish her authority or cement Thompson's position as the real leader of the engineering department. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did in that moment. Chief Thompson, I understand your concerns about reliability, but these systems have been tested extensively and have proven themselves in combat situations. More importantly, they're integrated into every aspect of this ship's operations. Ignoring them isn't just inefficient, it's dangerous. Thompson's smile was cold and dismissive. We'll see about that, ma'am. We'll see about that. The tension aboard the USS Hayworth continued to escalate as the destroyer moved deeper into contested waters. Intelligence reports confirmed the presence of enemy submarines in the area, and Captain Morrison ordered the crew to maintain heightened alert status. The ship's advanced sonar systems worked continuously, scanning for potential threats while the crew prepared for possible combat engagement. Rebecca found herself caught between her professional responsibilities and the ongoing conflict with Chief Thompson. Despite her attempts to maintain unity within the engineering department, Thompson's influence over the enlisted crew had grown stronger. He had cultivated a loyal following among the more experienced sailors, many of whom shared his skepticism about the ship's computerized systems. The situation became more complex when Petty Officer First Class Maria Santos, one of Rebecca's most capable technicians, approached her with concerns about the growing division within the department. Santos had worked closely with both officers and had witnessed firsthand how Thompson's resistance was affecting crew morale and operational efficiency. "Ma'am, I need to speak with you about the department dynamics," Santos said during a private meeting in Rebecca's office. "The crew is starting to take sides, and it's affecting our readiness. Some of the younger sailors are confused about which procedures to follow, and the experienced ones are following Chief Thompson's lead in avoiding the voice command systems." Rebecca appreciated Santos's honesty, but she was frustrated by the situation's complexity. "I've tried to work with Chief Thompson, but he seems determined to undermine the integration of these new systems. I can't force him to embrace technology, but I can't allow his resistance to compromise our operational effectiveness." Santos nodded thoughtfully. "Ma'am, if I may say so, the crew respects your technical knowledge, but they're also watching to see how you handle this challenge. Chief Thompson has been here longer, and he's built strong relationships with the enlisted personnel. They're torn between following orders and following someone they trust. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent announcement over the ship's communication system. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all hands to battle stations. The klaxon alarm echoed through the corridors as the crew rushed to their assigned positions. Rebecca and Santos quickly made their way to the engineering control room, where they found the department responding to the emergency with practiced efficiency. The ship's automated systems had detected multiple submarine contacts approaching from different directions, and the crew was preparing for potential combat engagement. Thompson was already at his station, manually operating the engineering controls despite the availability of voice command options. His face was grim as he monitored the ship's power distribution systems, ensuring that all weapons and defensive systems had adequate power. Rebecca took her position at the main engineering console, where she could oversee the entire department's operations. Chief Thompson switched to voice command protocols for emergency procedures, Rebecca ordered, her voice calm but firm. We need to maximize our response time and minimize the risk of human error. Thompson looked up from his console, his expression defiant. Ma'am, I've been running these systems manually for years without any problems. I don't need a computer to tell me how to do my job. The tension in the room was palpable as the crew watched the confrontation unfold. Rebecca knew that this moment would define her leadership and determine how the department would function during the crisis. The sound of sonar pings filled the air as the ship's systems tracked the approaching threats. The USS Hayworth's Combat Information Center buzzed with activity as the crew tracked multiple submarine contacts converging on their position. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom, providing updates on the tactical situation while ordering all departments to maintain maximum readiness. The destroyer's advanced sensors had detected at least 3 enemy submarines approaching from different vectors, creating a complex tactical challenge. In the engineering control room, Rebecca watched as her department executed emergency protocols with varying degrees of efficiency. The crew members who had embraced the voice command systems were able to respond quickly to changing power demands and system configurations. However, those following Thompson's example struggled with manual operations that required more time and attention. Engineering, this is the bridge. Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the communication system. We need maximum power to the sonar array and defensive systems. Enemy contacts are closing fast, and we need every advantage we can get. Rebecca immediately began coordinating the power distribution through the ship's integrated systems. Computer, prioritize power allocation to defensive systems and sonar array. Reduce non-essential systems to standby mode. The ship's artificial intelligence responded instantly, optimizing power flow throughout the vessel. Thompson, however, continued to operate his section manually, slowly adjusting power settings through individual control panels. His approach, while familiar to him, created bottlenecks in the system that affected overall efficiency. Rebecca could see the frustration building among the crew members who were waiting for his section to complete its configurations. "Chief Thompson, please switch to voice command protocols," Rebecca ordered again, her voice carrying an edge of urgency. "We're losing valuable time with manual operations." Thompson's response was swift and dismissive. "Ma'am, I don't trust these computer systems in a real combat situation. Manual control gives us more precision and reliability. The crew needs to know they can count on proven methods when lives are on the line." The first torpedo launched from an enemy submarine, its sonar signature immediately detected by the Hayworth sensors. The ship's automated defensive systems began tracking the incoming threat while calculating optimal evasive maneuvers. The destroyer's advanced countermeasures prepared to deploy, but their effectiveness depended on perfect coordination between all ship systems. "Torpedo in the water," announced the sonar operator over the ship's communication system. "Bearing 270, distance 4,000 yards and closing fast." Rebecca felt her pulse quicken as she realized the critical nature of their situation. The ship's survival depended on split-second timing and flawless execution of defensive protocols. Thompson's manual operations were creating delays that could prove fatal in the rapidly developing engagement. "All hands brace for evasive maneuvers," Captain Morrison announced. "Engineering, I need maximum power to engines and defensive systems immediately." The ship began its evasive turn, but Rebecca noticed that Thompson's section was still struggling to redirect power effectively. The manual systems required him to access multiple control panels and enter commands individually, a process that consumed precious seconds while the torpedo continued its approach. "Chief Thompson, the torpedo is closing fast," Rebecca said, her voice tense with urgency. "We need to optimize our defensive posture immediately. Please use the voice command system to coordinate with the ship's AI." Thompson's face was red with exertion and frustration as he worked frantically at his console. "I've got this under control, ma'am. Just give me a few more seconds to adjust the power settings manually." Rebecca watched the tactical display as the torpedo continued its relentless approach toward their position. The ship's countermeasures were ready to deploy, but they needed perfect power coordination to be effective. She realized that Thompson's stubborn resistance to the voice command systems was putting the entire crew at risk. The torpedo's sonar signature grew stronger as it closed the distance to the USS Hayworth. In the engineering control room, Rebecca watched Thompson struggle with manual controls while the ship's automated systems waited for his section to complete its power redistribution. The delay was creating a cascade effect throughout the ship's defensive network, potentially compromising their ability to survive the attack. Distance to torpedo, 2,000 yards and closing, announced the sonar operator. Estimated time to impact 90 seconds. Rebecca made a critical decision. She stepped away from her console and moved toward Thompson's station, her voice carrying the full authority of her rank. "Chief Thompson, I'm ordering you to step away from those controls and allow me to engage the voice command protocols. This is a direct order." Thompson looked up from his console, his face flushed with anger and determination. "Ma'am, I've been handling these systems for 22 years. I don't need some computer program to tell me how to defend this ship. Give me 30 more seconds and I'll have everything configured properly." The crew watched in tense silence as the confrontation unfolded. Rebecca could see the fear in their eyes as they realized the gravity of their situation. The torpedo was closing rapidly, and every second of delay reduced their chances of survival. "Chief Thompson, you have 5 seconds to comply with my order, or I will have you relieved of duty," Rebecca said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "The crew's lives depend on our ability to coordinate these systems effectively." Thompson's response was defiant. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you're just an engineer. When the shooting starts, experience matters more than fancy computer programs. I've never lost a ship, and I'm not about to start now." Rebecca had reached her breaking point. The torpedo was now less than 1,500 yards away, and Thompson's manual operations were still incomplete. She knew that the ship's survival depended on immediate action, regardless of the political consequences. "Security to engineering control room," she announced over the ship's communication system. "I need Chief Thompson relieved of duty immediately." The room erupted in shocked murmurs as the crew realized the severity of the situation. Thompson stood up from his console, his face showing a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Ma'am, you can't do this. The crew needs experienced leadership, not someone who learned everything from a computer manual." 2 security personnel entered the control room, their faces grim as they approached Thompson's station. Rebecca stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Chief Thompson, you are relieved of duty for failure to follow direct orders during a combat situation. Please accompany these personnel immediately." As Thompson was escorted from the control room, Rebecca moved to his console and immediately engaged the voice command protocols. "Computer, assume control of power distribution for Section 7. optimized defensive systems for incoming torpedo threat. The ship's artificial intelligence responded instantly, reconfiguring power flow throughout Thompson's section with perfect precision. The defensive systems came online at full capacity, ready to deploy countermeasures against the approaching torpedo. Torpedo distance, 800 yards, announced the sonar operator. Countermeasures ready for deployment. Rebecca felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as she watched the ship's systems respond to the voice commands. The integration between human decision-making and artificial intelligence created a seamless defense network that Thompson's manual operations could never have achieved. Deploy countermeasures, Captain Morrison ordered from the bridge. The ship's defensive systems launched a coordinated response, releasing decoys and electronic countermeasures designed to confuse the torpedo's guidance system. The voice command protocols allowed for precise timing and coordination that would have been impossible with manual controls. The USS Hayworth's countermeasures deployed with clockwork precision, creating a complex web of decoys and electronic signals designed to confuse the incoming torpedo. Rebecca watched the tactical display as the ship's artificial intelligence coordinated defensive systems with split-second timing, something that would have been impossible with Thompson's manual approach. Torpedo has acquired decoy target, announced the sonar operator, his voice filled with relief. Torpedo is tracking away from our position. The control room erupted in cheers as the crew realized they had successfully defeated the attack. Rebecca felt a surge of vindication as she watched the voice command systems continue their flawless coordination of ship operations. The integration of human expertise with artificial intelligence had proven its worth in the most critical moment. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom. "Outstanding work, engineering. Your rapid response saved the ship. Continue monitoring for additional threats." Rebecca nodded to her crew, who were now looking at her with newfound respect and admiration. The crisis had demonstrated the effectiveness of the systems she had been advocating, and Thompson's resistance had been exposed as dangerous and potentially fatal. Petty Officer Santos approached Rebecca's console, her expression showing both relief and concern. "Ma'am, that was incredible. The voice command system responded faster than any manual operation could have. But what about Chief Thompson? The crew is worried about what happens next." Rebecca understood the crew's concerns. Thompson had been a popular leader among the enlisted personnel, and his removal during combat would create ripples throughout the department. However, she also knew that leadership sometimes required making difficult decisions for the greater good. "Santos, Chief Thompson is a good sailor with extensive experience, but his refusal to adapt to new technology put the entire crew at risk, Rebecca explained. Command decisions during combat cannot be influenced by personal preferences or resistance to change. Every member of this crew deserves leadership that prioritizes their safety and mission effectiveness. The ship's sensors continued tracking the remaining submarine contacts, and Captain Morrison ordered the crew to maintain battle stations. The engagement was far from over, and the destroyer needed to be prepared for additional attacks. Rebecca knew that her department's performance during the first attack had established credibility, but they needed to maintain that standard throughout the crisis. All sections prepare for additional defensive actions, Rebecca announced to her crew. We've proven that our systems work, but we need to stay focused and ready for whatever comes next. The crew responded with renewed confidence, their movements more coordinated and efficient than before. The successful defense had demonstrated the value of the voice command systems, and even the sailors who had previously been skeptical now embraced the technology with enthusiasm. A second torpedo launch was detected from a different submarine, this time approaching from a different angle. The ship's sensors immediately began tracking the new threat while calculating optimal defensive responses. Rebecca felt confident that her department was ready for the challenge. Torpedo in the water, bearing 090, announced the sonar operator. Distance 3,000 yards and closing. Rebecca moved to the main engineering console and began coordinating the ship's defensive posture. Computer, optimize power distribution for defensive systems. Prioritize countermeasure deployment and evasive maneuvering capability. The ship's artificial intelligence responded instantly, adjusting power flow throughout the vessel with perfect precision. The defensive systems came online at full capacity, ready to engage the incoming threat with coordinated countermeasures. This time, the crew worked in perfect harmony with the voice command systems, their training and experience combining with artificial intelligence to create a formidable defense network. The integration was seamless, with human judgment guiding the ship's automated responses. The second torpedo attack unfolded with deadly precision as the enemy submarine attempted to exploit the USS Hayworth's defensive posture. However, the destroyer's crew was now operating with the full integration of voice command systems, creating a level of coordination that their attackers had not anticipated. Rebecca stood at the main engineering console, her voice calm and confident as she directed the ship's defensive operations. Computer, analyze torpedo trajectory and recommend optimal countermeasure deployment sequence. The ship's artificial intelligence processed the data in milliseconds, providing tactical recommendations that took into account the torpedo's speed, approach angle, and guidance system characteristics. This information was immediately shared with the bridge and weapons systems, creating a comprehensive defensive strategy. Recommended countermeasure sequence uploaded to defensive systems, the computer announced. Deployment ready on your command. Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the ship. Engineering, execute defensive sequence. All hands brace for countermeasure deployment. Rebecca coordinated the response with precision that would have been impossible under Thompson's manual system. Computer, execute countermeasure sequence. Deploy decoys at optimal intervals and activate electronic countermeasures. The ship's defensive systems launched a sophisticated response, creating multiple false targets while simultaneously jamming the torpedo's guidance system. The voice command protocols allowed for precise timing and coordination between different defensive elements. Torpedo is showing signs of guidance confusion, reported the sonar operator. Countermeasures are having effect. The crew watched tensely as the torpedo's path began to deviate from its original course. The ship's countermeasures were working exactly as designed, but the threat was not yet neutralized. Rebecca knew that the next few seconds would determine whether their defense was successful. Torpedo has lost target lock, announced the sonar operator. Torpedo is now tracking decoy signature. Another cheer erupted from the engineering crew as they realized their second successful defense. The voice command systems had proven their effectiveness once again, validating Rebecca's approach and demonstrating the superiority of integrated human-AI operations. However, the celebration was short-lived as the ship's sensors detected a third submarine contact approaching from a different direction. This attack was more sophisticated, with multiple torpedoes launched simultaneously in a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm the destroyer's defensive capabilities. Multiple torpedo launches detected, announced the sonar operator, his voice tense with concern. 3 torpedoes approaching from different bearings. This is a coordinated attack. Rebecca felt her heart rate increase as she realized the magnitude of the threat. 3 torpedoes approaching simultaneously would test the limits of their defensive systems and require perfect coordination between all ship departments. This was exactly the type of scenario that the voice command systems had been designed to handle. Computer, analyze multiple torpedo threat and recommend comprehensive defensive strategy, Rebecca ordered. We need to coordinate all available countermeasures for maximum effectiveness. The ship's artificial intelligence began processing the complex tactical situation, analyzing the approach vectors of all 3 torpedoes while calculating optimal defensive responses. The system's ability to process multiple variables simultaneously gave the crew a significant advantage in the unfolding crisis. Comprehensive defensive strategy complete, the computer announced. Recommended approach involves sequential countermeasure deployment with coordinated evasive maneuvers. Success probability is 73% with current system configuration. Captain Morrison's voice carried urgency as he addressed the crew. All hands, we're facing a coordinated torpedo attack. Engineering, I need maximum performance from all systems. This is what we've trained for. Rebecca took a deep breath and prepared to coordinate the most complex defensive operation of her career. The success of the mission and the survival of the crew depended on the seamless integration of human expertise with artificial intelligence, exactly what Thompson had dismissed as unreliable computer dependence. The USS Hayworth faced its most challenging moment as 3 torpedoes approached from different directions, creating a complex tactical puzzle that required immediate and precise responses. Rebecca stood at the engineering console, her hands steady despite the gravity of the situation, as she prepared to coordinate the ship's most sophisticated defensive operation. Computer, initiate comprehensive defensive protocol, Rebecca commanded. Coordinate all countermeasure systems for sequential deployment against multiple threats. The ship's artificial intelligence began orchestrating a complex defense that involved precise timing, power management, and coordination between multiple ship systems. The voice command protocols allowed for real-time adjustments and optimizations that would have been impossible with manual controls. Torpedo 1, bearing 270, distance 2,000 yards, announced the sonar operator. Torpedo 2, bearing 090, distance 1,800 yards. Torpedo 3, bearing 180, distance 2,200 yards. Rebecca processed the information quickly, understanding that the staggered approach times would require different defensive strategies for each torpedo. The ship's AI was already calculating optimal responses, but human judgment would be crucial in making final tactical decisions. Computer, deploy countermeasures against Torpedo 2 first, then coordinate defensive sequence for remaining threats, Rebecca ordered. Prioritize by closest approach time. The ship's defensive systems responded instantly, launching the first wave of countermeasures toward the most immediate threat. Electronic jamming systems engaged, while decoy launchers prepared to create false targets for the approaching torpedoes. First countermeasure deployment successful, reported the defensive systems operator. Torpedo 2 is showing guidance degradation. Rebecca felt a moment of satisfaction, but she knew the battle was far from over. The remaining 2 torpedoes continued their approach, and the ship needed to maintain perfect coordination to survive the multi-pronged attack. Computer, prepare second defensive sequence, Rebecca commanded. Coordinate countermeasures for torpedoes 1 and 3. Optimize for simultaneous engagement. The ship's artificial intelligence calculated the complex timing required to engage 2 torpedoes simultaneously, while maintaining effectiveness against each threat. The system's ability to process multiple variables in real time gave the crew a significant tactical advantage. Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the ship. Engineering, outstanding work on the first torpedo. Continue defensive operations against remaining threats. Rebecca nodded, her confidence growing as she watched the voice command systems perform flawlessly under extreme pressure. The integration of human decision-making with artificial intelligence was proving its worth in the most critical circumstances. Second defensive sequence ready, announced the computer, awaiting command authorization for simultaneous countermeasure deployment. Rebecca took a deep breath, knowing that the next few seconds would determine the fate of the entire crew. The coordination required for defending against multiple torpedoes simultaneously was beyond the capability of any manual system, validating her faith in the advanced technology. Execute second defensive sequence, Rebecca ordered. Deploy all countermeasures on my mark. Mark. The ship's defensive systems launched a coordinated response against the 2 remaining torpedoes. Decoys and electronic countermeasures deployed with precision timing, creating a complex web of false signals and targets designed to confuse the incoming weapons. Countermeasures deployed successfully, reported the defensive systems operator. Both torpedoes are showing guidance interference. The crew watched tensely as the ship's sensors tracked the effectiveness of their defensive measures. The voice command systems continued to monitor and adjust the countermeasures in real time, responding to changes in torpedo behavior with superhuman speed and precision. Torpedo 1 has lost target lock, announced the sonar operator. Torpedo 3 is still tracking, but guidance appears degraded. Rebecca knew that 1 torpedo was still a serious threat, but the ship's defensive systems had successfully neutralized 2 of the 3 weapons. The performance of the voice command systems under extreme pressure had exceeded all expectations. The final torpedo continued its approach toward the USS Hayworth, its guidance system partially compromised, but still functional enough to pose a significant threat. Rebecca watched the tactical display as the ship's sensors tracked the weapon's erratic course, knowing that 1 successful hit could still cause catastrophic damage to the destroyer. Computer, analyze remaining torpedo trajectory and recommend final defensive measures, Rebecca ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the control room. The ship's artificial intelligence processed the torpedo's current course and behavior patterns, calculating the most effective response to neutralize the remaining threat. The system's ability to adapt to changing circumstances in real time was proving invaluable in the dynamic combat situation. Final torpedo guidance system shows 70% degradation, the computer reported. Recommended response involves close-in defensive systems with additional decoy deployment. Rebecca nodded, understanding that the ship's last line of defense would need to engage the torpedo at close range. The voice command systems would be crucial in coordinating the precise timing required for successful interception. Computer, prepare close-in defensive systems for final engagement, Rebecca commanded. Coordinate with bridge for optimal firing solution. The ship's automated weapons systems came online, their sensors tracking the approaching torpedo while calculating the precise moment for interception. The integration between the engineering department's power management and the weapons system's targeting capabilities demonstrated the full potential of the voice command protocols. Close-in defensive systems ready, announced the weapons operator. Torpedo distance 500 yards and closing. Rebecca felt the weight of command as she prepared to authorize the final defensive action. The success of this engagement would determine whether the ship survived the coordinated attack and validate her leadership during the crisis. Computer, execute final defensive sequence on my command, Rebecca ordered. All systems coordinate for maximum effectiveness. The ship's artificial intelligence acknowledged the command while continuing to track the torpedo's approach. The voice command systems had orchestrated a perfect defense against the multi-pronged attack, demonstrating capabilities that Thompson's manual approach could never have achieved. Torpedo distance 200 yards, announced the sonar operator. Final defensive engagement authorized. Rebecca made the critical decision that would determine the ship's fate. Computer, execute final defensive sequence. Engage torpedo with all available systems. The ship's close-in defensive systems opened fire with devastating accuracy. Their computer-controlled targeting systems, tracking the torpedo's erratic course while adjusting for its damaged guidance system. The voice command protocols coordinated the engagement with perfect precision. Direct hit on torpedo, announced the weapons operator. Torpedo has been neutralized. The engineering control room erupted in cheers as the crew realized they had successfully defended against all three torpedoes. Rebecca felt a surge of vindication as she watched her crew celebrate their victory, knowing that the voice command systems had proven their worth in the most challenging circumstances. Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the ship. Outstanding work, all hands. Engineering department, your performance during this engagement was exceptional. You've saved the ship and demonstrated the highest standards of naval professionalism." Rebecca looked around the control room at her crew, who were now looking at her with genuine respect and admiration. The crisis had tested every aspect of their training and equipment, and the voice command systems had exceeded all expectations. Petty Officer Santos approached Rebecca's console, her expression showing both relief and pride. "Ma'am, that was incredible. The voice command systems performed flawlessly under pressure. I don't think anyone in the department will question their effectiveness again." Rebecca nodded, feeling satisfied that her approach had been validated through real combat experience. The successful defense against 3 simultaneous torpedoes had proven that modern naval warfare required the integration of human expertise with advanced technology. In the aftermath of the successful defense, the USS Hayworth's crew began assessing the situation and preparing for potential follow-up attacks. The engineering department had performed flawlessly during the crisis, and the voice command systems had proven their effectiveness beyond any doubt. Rebecca felt a sense of vindication as she watched her crew work with renewed confidence and respect for the technology they had once questioned. Captain Morrison arrived in the engineering control room to personally congratulate the crew on their outstanding performance. His presence elevated the mood even further, and Rebecca could see the pride in her crew's faces as they received recognition for their professionalism and skill. "Lieutenant Commander Martinez, your leadership during this engagement was exceptional," Captain Morrison said, his voice carrying genuine admiration. The integration of voice command systems with traditional naval operations saved this ship and demonstrated the future of naval warfare. Rebecca appreciated the captain's recognition, but she knew that the real victory was improving the effectiveness of the systems she had been advocating. The successful defense had silenced critics and established a new standard for naval operations aboard the Hayworth. "Thank you, Captain. The crew performed admirably under pressure, and the voice command systems exceeded all expectations. I believe this engagement has demonstrated the importance of embracing new technology while maintaining the highest standards of naval professionalism." Captain Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed. However, we still need to address the situation with Chief Thompson. His actions during the crisis put the entire crew at risk, and we cannot allow personal preferences to compromise operational effectiveness." Rebecca understood the complexity of the situation. Thompson was a respected veteran with extensive experience, but his refusal to adapt to new technology had created a dangerous situation during combat. The crew needed to understand that leadership required making difficult decisions for the greater good. "Captain, I believe Chief Thompson's experience and knowledge are valuable assets, but his resistance to the voice command systems created unnecessary risks during the engagement. Perhaps we can find a way to utilize his expertise while ensuring compliance with operational procedures. The captain considered her suggestion. "I appreciate your diplomatic approach, Lieutenant Commander. However, insubordination during combat is a serious offense that requires formal action. We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation and determine appropriate consequences." As if summoned by their conversation, Chief Thompson appeared in the control room, escorted by security personnel. His expression showed a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and grudging respect as he observed the crew's confident operation of the voice command systems. "Chief Thompson, I want to speak with you privately," Captain Morrison said, his tone serious but not hostile. "Your actions during the engagement require formal review and discussion." Thompson nodded, his earlier defiance replaced by a more subdued demeanor. The successful defense had clearly demonstrated the effectiveness of the systems he had criticized, and his resistance had been exposed as dangerous and potentially fatal. "Captain, I understand the seriousness of the situation," Thompson said, his voice lacking its earlier conviction. "I may have allowed my personal preferences to affect my judgment during the crisis." Rebecca watched the interaction with interest, wondering if Thompson had learned from the experience or if his change in attitude was merely a response to the consequences of his actions. The crew was also observing the conversation, understanding that the outcome would affect the future dynamics of the engineering department. "Chief Thompson, your experience and dedication to this ship are not in question," Captain Morrison said. "However, your refusal to follow direct orders during combat put the entire crew at risk. We need to discuss how to move forward constructively." The conversation continued in the captain's quarters, leaving Rebecca to manage the engineering department as the ship continued its mission. The successful defense had established her authority and demonstrated the effectiveness of her approach, but she knew that healing the division within the department would require time and effort. The USS Hayworth continued its patrol as word of the successful defense spread throughout the ship. The engineering department's performance during the torpedo attack had become legendary among the crew, and Rebecca found herself receiving congratulations from officers and enlisted personnel throughout the vessel. The voice command systems had proven their worth in the most critical circumstances, silencing critics and establishing a new standard for naval operations. Petty Officer Santos approached Rebecca with a report on the department's post-engagement status. "Ma'am, all systems are operating at optimal levels. The voice command protocols performed flawlessly during the attack, and the crew's confidence in the technology has increased significantly." Rebecca nodded, pleased with the positive changes she observed in her department. The successful defense had transformed the crew's attitude toward the advanced systems, and even the most skeptical sailors now embraced the technology with enthusiasm. Santos, I want you to work with the crew to document our procedures and performance during the engagement, Rebecca said. This experience provides valuable insights that could benefit other ships in the fleet. The project would serve multiple purposes, helping to solidify the lessons learned while providing the crew with a sense of ownership in the department's success. Rebecca knew that involving the crew in the documentation process would reinforce their confidence in the voice command systems.